Welcome into the greatest time of the year. It is Selection Sunday, and we are just moments away from finding out the field of 68. So, we're going to be taking you through all the teams unveiling who is going to be the number one seeds, who's going to be the top four seeds, and what bubble teams will be getting in. So, we're going to be going through all that in just moments. We did have some big games today with Florida winning the SEC, VCU winning the A10. Yale winning the Ivy League, as well as Michigan beating Wisconsin just a couple of minutes ago in the Big Ten Championship. So I'm fired up to be here. I hope everyone is fired up to be here as well, as we are just moments away from finding out the field of 68. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and look at the final edition of the bracketology. ESPN's Joe Lenardi. So let's go ahead and pull that up. We'll go through the bracket watch, go through all the teams on the bubble, and then as well as we will look at what teams have moved up and what teams have moved down, and also look at the top four seeds and see how many teams in each conference are projected to get into this NCAA tournament. So let's go ahead and look at the final bracketology of this 2024-2025 college basketball season. This was updated around 4:10 p.m. Eastern, 3:10 Central right here on this Sunday afternoon. So let's go ahead and get into the bracket watch. Still no changes on the top overall seed, even though that Auburn has lost 3 out of their 4 games, and they did lose to Tennessee in the semifinals of the SEC tournament, where Florida ended up winning that SEC tournament against Tennessee. Auburn is still the number one overall seed. I think that there should be really no discussions about the top overall seed. I'll be shocked if it's anyone else other than Auburn. I think that the only other team worthy of that top overall seed is going to be Duke. Duke ended up winning the ACC championship, but we'll just have to see here in a couple of minutes if Auburn is the top overall seed, but Joe Lenardi has them as the top overall seed for now. The first team out is Boise State. Boise State ended up losing to Colorado State, so that was a big blow for the Broncos. So projected to be the first team out. I think that they're going to be matched up against resumes of Xavier, Indiana, and North Carolina, as well as Texas. And then the last team in is Xavier. Xavier did not make a run in the Big East tournament. It ended up being St. John's being the winners. St. John's ended up winning both the regular season as well as the conference championship. Xavier lost by 2 points against Marquette in the second round of the Big East tournament. So we will see if Xavier did enough in the regular season. So projected, Xavier is to be the last team in. So that's the bracket watch. Now let's go ahead and dive to the teams on the bubble. So the last 4 byes, you have Oklahoma and Arkansas, both out of the SEC. So it looks like the SEC is more than likely going to be projected 13 teams. We'll get to Texas and Vanderbilt here in just a few moments. But Oklahoma, they almost had a big-time win against Kentucky. They ended up coming back all the way down 6 with about under a minute left, and then Otega Owe hit a buzzer beater. So Oklahoma really had a big opportunity to get another big win. But I think that Oklahoma has definitely done enough. So we'll either see them as the last 4 in as an 11 seed, or we'll see the Sooners being a 10 seed. Arkansas did get some big news. Boogie Fland, he's projected to be coming back for the NCAA tournament. So that's a big one for the Hogs. So Arkansas, I think, has done enough. I mean, this was a team that started off 0-5 in SEC play, and they have really turned it around this season. So I expect Arkansas to be in the field. West Virginia did not have a good showing in the Big 12 tournament, losing to Colorado in the first round as well. I think that West Virginia has done enough to earn a bids, but we will have to see. And then Utah State, another team in the Mountain West. They had a good showing in the Mountain West conference tournament. So we will see if Utah State. But right now these are the 4 teams that are projected to avoid playing in Dayton. But the teams projected to be in Dayton, the last 4 in, is Vanderbilt out of the SEC. Vanderbilt definitely missed opportunity in the first round to beat a team like Texas, who's squarely on the bubble there. But Vanderbilt, really good season for them. They were projected to finish last in a really good conference in the SEC. But I think that Vanderbilt, they're going to be sweating out. But if you had to ask me, I think that Vanderbilt is going to be safely in this field. Whether that's the last 4 in or last 4 by, we will see here in just a few moments. San Diego State. So you see a lot of teams represented from the Mountain West. Good thing that Colorado State, we looked at a couple of days ago. Colorado State was in the next 4 out, but they took care of business against Boise State in the Mountain West Conference Championship. San Diego State, though, did up losing in the semifinal round. So we will see if San Diego State did enough. Indiana, one of the teams out of the Big Ten that are in the last four in. Indiana lost to Oregon in the second round of the tournament. So like a lot of these bubble teams, they missed out on a good opportunity to really solidify themselves into the field of 68. And then Xavier, like we mentioned them, they are projected to be the last team in. We will see if that ultimately comes to fruition. But Xavier out of the Big East is projected to be the final team into the tournament. First four out, let's go through this pretty quickly, and then we'll go through the actual projections here. First four out, you have Boise State, like I mentioned, who made it to the final but ended up losing to Colorado State last night. Texas, I just don't really see this team getting in. I'll be shocked. North Carolina, 1-12 against quad one wins, so we'll see if the preseason top 10 team, North Carolina Tar Heels, will make it. Ohio State, I think that they're solidly out of the tournament, losing to Iowa, who is the 15 seed in that tournament, just doesn't do it for you. Next four out, you can definitely make a case for UC Irvine. UC Irvine played great throughout the Big West, but it ended up being UC San Diego win that conference tournament. Dayton out of A-10, so a lot of A-10 representation. George Mason missed out on an opportunity today as VCU won the A-10, so we'll see if Dayton did enough. Wake Forest and SMU, I'm not even going to talk about those teams. Those teams definitely did not do enough this season to make it, and the ACC was pretty down this season. So that is on the bubble. Now let's go on to the projected first four games. So you have Alabama State, new to the field. They won the SWAC championship against Jackson State, so they're projected to face off against St. Francis. And then you have American and Mount St. Mary's, both conference champions. And then in the 12 seed, you would have Indiana and Xavier. And then you would have 11 seed being Vanderbilt and San Diego State. So really you see looking through the brackets, let's just go ahead and look through the top four seeds. We'll go through that pretty quickly. Look at what teams are moving up and moving down the field. So in the South, you have the number one overall seed in Auburn. Michigan State would be the 2. Kentucky would be the 3. And Arizona would be the 4. Let's move on now to the East region where you have number one seed being Duke. So Duke at the moment is projected to be the number 2 overall seed. They would be facing off against the winner of 16 seed American and Mount St. Mary's. And you see Ole Miss and Iowa State are both moving up in the bracketology there. Ole Miss moving up to a 6 seed after a good showing in Nashville. Iowa State, they really played tough against BYU. They moved up to a 3 seed. Then VCU, winners of the A-10, they are solidly in the field of 68. So they moved up to a number 10 seed. Moving on down here to the West, the projected number 1 seed, and this would be the number 4 overall seed, would be the SEC champs, the Florida Gators. Purdue's up to a 4 seed. Utah State still in the field, but down to an 11 seed. Montana would be down to a 14. And Oklahoma would be up to a 10 seed there out of the SEC. And then in the Midwest, Houston projected to be the number 3 overall seed. Houston out of the Big Ten. They also not only won the regular season, but also the conference championship in the Big 12. Michigan, who just won the Big Ten conference tournament, they're down to a 5. But we will see if that win really changes their seeding. But I think that Michigan, once this bracket comes out here in a few moments, that the Wolverines will be a projected 5. And that it looks like it's all the really movers. So looking at the conference breakdown at the moment, SEC the most teams out of anyone with 13 projected teams. Big 10 with 9, Big 12 with 8, Big East with 5, Mountain West with 4, ACC and the West Coast Conference with 3 and 2 respectively. So that is the end of our bracketologies. If you watch my recent bracketology videos through that, we've been making our picks. So we are just moments away. I'll be taking any last-minute questions if you guys have it. If not, we will just go ahead and get this thing rolling here. But how we're going to be doing this, I have a live update that we're going to be looking at on NCAA.com. So I'll just be reading out the teams as it's listed off, but also going to be using NCAA.com to also as a visual so you guys can keep up with the bracket. But if this doesn't live update, I also have pdffiller.com. If you've been with us here on the channel, I'll be using that pretty often there. So we'll just be pulling this up as we're about to get into it. This is our March Madness selection, so let's get right into it. And yeah, they're starting off with a Greg Gumbel tribute. I mean, definitely it's definitely not going to be the same without him. Definitely a legendary sports commentator. And let's get right into this. So definitely excited to be here. Hope everyone is enjoying their Sunday so far. Let me know who's going to be in the number one seeds. Do you think it's going to be Auburn? Do you think it's going to be Duke? And who gets the final number one seed? Will it be the Florida Gators, who just won the SEC tournament, or will Tennessee stick in there? So let me know down in your comments what you think. But we are just moments away from finding out the fear of the field of 68. So great tribute right there by Greg Gumbel. We definitely miss him on this day, but we are ready to get right into this as they are just starting the show at the moment. But shouldn't take much longer until we find out the number one overall seed, and then we'll probably get into the South region because it'll more than likely be the Auburn Tigers out of the SEC. Also, let me know down in the comments who you think is going to be making it to the Final Four in the national championship game. I definitely want to get you guys involved here. Viewing, I appreciate everybody for tuning in to today's show. We'll also be having our official March Madness prediction special shortly after this, probably like 7:30, 8-ish Central Time. That show will be going live after this one. But I'm definitely fired up. I mean, I am a college football fan, but man, this is like Christmas morning for me. So once we get this bracket, I'm going to go ahead and shut up, and we're going to get right into the teams. But they're just talking about it right now, probably just delaying the ultimately unveiling of this field of 68. But whenever we get going in here, we will get going as well. And like I mentioned, be following it along on MarchMadnessLive.com. And we'll be doing some analysis early on the bracket, see which team has a really good path to making it to the Final Four. San Antonio, almost said San Diego. And also who could be some likely Cinderella stories, because we saw last year NC State, the 11th seed, making it all the way to the Final Four. So you always got to keep that in mind. But look at all those teams. We're just waiting to find out their name. You see the likes of Vanderbilt, St. John's, the winners of the Big East, all waiting for their name to be called. And looks like Auburn is the number one overall seed. Really no surprise to me. So it looks like they're going to be playing their first round games in Lexington, Kentucky. So the quad with the 8-9 will be playing in Lexington, and the 5 and the 12 and the 4 and the 13 will be playing in Denver. So Auburn at 28-5 is the number one overall seed. They'll be facing off against the 16 seed winner, Alabama State, in St. Francis, Pennsylvania. So St. Francis, Pennsylvania, the champs from their conference, are going to be dancing against Alabama State in the first 4 games in Dayton. So that's going to be an exciting matchup. Definitely not a good draw for anyone to get Auburn, but dang, Louisville's an 8 seed. That's surprising. I thought they would at least be like a 7 or a 6 seed. So that's kind of I don't know. That's a bad draw for Louisville there. I mean, but that is a scary number 18 that made it all the way to the ACC championship. So we see Louisville Cardinal being the 8. And man, what a matchup with Creighton, the 9 seed out of the Big East. So that's definitely a great game to watch. So in that quadrant, you have number 1 seed Auburn facing off against the winner of Alabama State and St. Francis. And then the 8 and 9, you have Louisville and Creighton. So moving on down, Michigan, the Big Ten champs today, are in this bracket as the number 5 seed. So we will just wait which number 12 seed they're going to be getting. I think if they get McNeese, this could be a possible upset here. So let's see what number 12 seed they draw. So let's go ahead and wait for this. But they're going to be playing in Denver, and it's going to be UC San Diego, the champs out of the Big West, 30-4. Big season from UC San Diego. So that could be a possible upset. I mean, UC San Diego, if you haven't watched them, they could definitely shoot the lights out of you. So Michigan, they play phenomenal defense. So this is going to be a great 5 versus 12 matchup. Can Michigan really keep the momentum against a team like UC San Diego? But moving on down, we see another SEC team in the South, Texas A&M, the 4 seed with a record of 22-10. They are the 4 seed, and they get to face off against number 13 seed Yale. And they are pretty much in the same spot as Auburn was last year, facing off against the Yale Bulldogs. So, but going over that quadrant, you have number 5 seed Michigan versus number 12 seed UC San Diego, and you have Texas A&M, the 4, versus Yale, the 13. So let's go ahead and move on down. Ole Miss, a lot of SEC teams here in the South, 3 already, as Ole Miss would be the 6th seed, and they get to face off against San Diego State. Wow, North Carolina is in the field. I did not expect that at all, but hey, they're the name brand, and then I believe like the commissioner of the committee is the North Carolina AD, so maybe it has something a little bit to do with that. But we see North Carolina, they are in the tournament as one of the last 4 teams in, so they'll be facing off against San Diego State. So now let's move on down to the 3 seed out of the Big 12 is Iowa State. So this is looking like a loaded South region. You have Auburn, Ole Miss, and then they have Lipscomb. Man, that might be a potential upset. I think a lot of people are going to be picking Lipscomb. They're a quality team. So we see Marquette out of the Big East, 23-10 overall in the regular season. They're going to be the number 7 seed there. And they get to face off against Richard Pitino's squad out of the Mountain West in New Mexico. So that's a really good matchup. We have Marquette versus New Mexico in the 10. So one more, and it's going to be Michigan State. Tom Izzo Spartans are the number 2 seed in the South. And, man, Auburn being the number 1 overall seed, this region is definitely not going to be easy. You have teams like Iowa State and Michigan State just waiting for you at the bottom. So let's see what number 15 seed that Michigan State draws. And let's see who that team is going to be. They're going to be facing off in Cleveland, Ohio. And it will be the Bryant Bulldogs who take care of business against Maine yesterday. So looking at this South region, I mean, Auburn definitely doesn't – I really like the top of it. I know that Michigan has been hot. I mean, so early picks there. We might get a 12-13 if both of those teams do not play well. But I think that Auburn is really set up to make a deep run. I think that 8-9 matchup could definitely give them problems, especially if Creighton moves on with Ryan Kalkbrenner. And if Louisville moves on, you have to deal with one of the best point guards in all the country with Chucky Hepburn. But honestly, I really like Auburn's path there. I think at minimum they make it to the Sweet 16. But to me, early on, I think that Auburn make it sit. I think that this is really setting up for like an Auburn, Iowa State, Auburn, Michigan State, unless there's a couple of upsets. But man, I watch out for that North Carolina team. I mean, if they get past San Diego State, I could see them pull off the upset against Ole Miss. And Iowa State, this team hasn't been looking like themselves, dealing with a lot of injuries. So I think that North Carolina would definitely be one of those teams that could pull off an upset, maybe make a run, move on to the Sweet 16, and maybe face off against Michigan State, being the number 2 seed there. So let's, as you see there, it looks like the bracket is being updated there. So we'll go ahead and move right through it. So really good matchups there in the South, but I think that this is really shaping up to be like an Auburn, Iowa State, Michigan State, or Auburn type of. I really like that draw for Auburn there if they could get past. Obviously, they're going to get past the 16 seed, but I think that if they could get past the winner of Louisville and Creighton, I think that they could definitely make a deep run and maybe make it to San Antonio. So Auburn, I think that's a really nice draw for them because Michigan has been inconsistent. Texas A&M out of the SEC, you have guard play with Wade Taylor, so you can't ever count them out. And then you have Henry Coleman down there in the middle. But if you're an Auburn fan, I think that you really have to like this draw there. So it looks like we're going to our first commercial break. What do y'all think of the South? Do you think that Auburn got a good draw? Do you see this team making it all the way to the Final Four? Or do you see a team like North Carolina who just snuck into the field making a run, or will it be Michigan State or Iowa State? But let's go ahead and look through all the matchups there. So let's go ahead and refresh this. So we have number 1 seed Auburn facing off against, I believe it was Alabama State, the winner of Alabama State. You have Louisville and Creighton, which is like, I mean, my gosh, these 8-9 matchups. I'm definitely looking forward to the other 8-9 matchups that it's going to be revealed, because looking at the recent bracketology, we've had some really good 8-9 games with like UConn and Oklahoma facing off. So I'm going to be interested to see what other 8-9 games we get. Number 5 seed Michigan versus number 12 UC San Diego. If UC San Diego, I think that's definitely one of the popular upset picks. I think that Michigan. Obviously, a lot of people are just going to look at their Big Ten championship run, but this team has definitely been prone to a loss every now and then. Texas A&M against Yale, that's definitely going to be a tricky matchup for Texas A&M, but I think that Texas A&M this time will get by. So we might see like a SEC showdown as early on in the Sweet 16 with number 1 seed Auburn and number 4 seed Texas A&M. If both of those teams can take care of business, we have a number 6 seed Ole Miss will be facing off against the winner of San Diego State and North Carolina. So I would probably early pick North Carolina would definitely beat San Diego State, and they would give Ole Miss all of them. But the way that Ole Miss played in the SEC tournament, I definitely wouldn't overlook the Rebels, especially with their guard play and Sean Padula. This Ole Miss team, you can't ever count out, a team coached by Chris Beard in March Madness. And then you have 3 seed Iowa State, number 14 seed Lipscomb. If this was ever going to be a 4th versus 3 upset, it would probably be this one. Iowa State dealing with some injuries. This is a team that definitely struggles on offense at times, but Lipscomb's definitely one of those teams that are going to be a scary number 14 seed. But we will have to see what other number 14 seeds there are and see if there's any other likely matchups to pull off an upset. And then looking at the bottom of the region, you have number 7 seed Marquette and number 10 seed New Mexico. Marquette, we've been talking about them. We'll see if Xavier makes it in or not. But this Marquette team has not beat a projected March Madness team since like January. But they were able to pick up a win against Xavier. They played St. John's well for the first half, but St. John's took over in the second half. But for Marquette to win, Cam Jones has to be Cam Jones. But that's definitely a good one. And finishing off in the South, you have number 2 seed Michigan State and number 15 seed Bryant. So I think that Michigan State should really have no problem against Bryant. So looks like we are back. Looks like I don't know what we're going to get to next. Probably going to be either the number 4 or the 2 seed here. And it will be the number 2 overall seed, the Duke Blue Devils, champs of the both regular season and the conference tournament. So Duke is the number 1 seed, 31-3 in the East region. This is their first round games are going to be in Raleigh as well as their second round games. So this is pretty much going to be home court advantage for Duke. So let's see what 16 seed they draw. Looks like the winner of American and Mount St. Mary's. So both of those teams won their respective conference tournaments to get here. So it looks like Duke will be facing off against American and Mount St. Mary's. And Mississippi State, another SEC team here, 21-12. They get a draw as the number 8 seed. So let's see who they're going to be facing off against. If it's UConn, buckle up, Duke, because you're not going to get an easy one, and it's going to be Baylor, actually. So Baylor, even with 14 regular season losses, Baylor does get in. So that's going to be another great game between Mississippi State and Baylor. Oregon out of the Big Ten is the number 5 seed with a record of 24-9. So Dana Altman's squad will be playing their games in Seattle, Washington. So that's another team close to home. And the Liberty Flames, the champs out of the Conference USA, gets the draw against the Oregon Ducks. So congratulations to Liberty for making the dance. That's definitely a tremendous basketball squad. So we'll see if they can get it done against Oregon in the first round. So the number 4 seed is Arizona. So potential Pac-12 showdown in the second round if Arizona can take care of business against the number 13 seeded Akron Zips, the champs out of the MAC. And I've been talking Akron up. I think that this team could pull off an upset, but I don't know about this draw with Arizona. But Arizona has been, up and down a roller coaster ride, but we will see. All right, now let's move on down. BYU, one of the hottest teams in all of college basketball, will be the number 6 seed in the East region. So BYU, they did get trounced by Houston, but everybody this season has pretty much been getting trounced by the Cougars. So let's see what number 11 seed they draw. And it will be the VCU Rams out of the A-10, the champs of that conference. That's going to be a fantastic showdown that we get in Denver, Colorado, between BYU and VCU. So now let's move on to the 3 and the 14. Let's see what number 3 seed will be in the East region. And it will be the Wisconsin Badgers, the runner-up in the Big Ten Conference Tournament. Definitely really playing well down the stretch there. So Wisconsin, a scary number 3 seed here to deal with in the East. They're 26-9 overall in the regular season. And they get the Montana Grizzlies out of the Big Sky, champs of the Big Sky, record of 25-9. They get a good draw against Wisconsin. All right, let's move on out. St. Mary's, the Gales out of the West Coast Conference. They ended up winning the regular season championship, but ultimately fell to Gonzaga in their conference tournament championship. So St. Mary's, I mean, they are pretty much a given to be in this conference in this tournament, and they get Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, they are safely in the tournament. What a story! Commodores out of the SEC. It's going to be really good. That's going to be a really good matchup between St. Mary's and Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's a scrappy ball club. They've had a lot of good wins. They beat Tennessee. They held close with Auburn earlier in the season, so I would not count out Vanderbilt in that 10-7 matchup. And Alabama, another SEC team here in the East region. So Duke's region, I think, is really set up for them. They do get a tough 4-5 matchup either with Oregon or Arizona. But, I mean, Alabama, they could, if they're on, they're like one of the best teams in the country. But Alabama does get number 15 seed Robert Morris. So that is your East region. So it looks like your top 4 seeds are Duke, Alabama, Wisconsin is your 3 seed, Arizona is your 4 seed there. But 8-9 matchup, really good one, Mississippi State and Baylor. But we will go through the East region if they do go into a commercial break. Not sure if they're going to be revealing any more after this. But Duke and Auburn so far. So Auburn is your number 1 overall seed in the field of 68, and Duke is your number 2 overall seed. So far, really that's how we had it. But North Carolina getting in is definitely one of the storylines that are definitely going to be talked about today and throughout the week. But I mean, they were 1-12 against quad ones. So I don't know. I don't really justify them getting into the tournament. I would have put a team like Boise State. We'll see if Xavier gets into the tournament, but that's just me. But I think that this is a really good region for Duke as long as Duke can stay healthy throughout this one. Obviously, Alabama will be a problem down there in the East, especially if that team could get hot. You have a guy like Mark Sears, who could go off for 30 or 40 a game. We saw in last year's run whenever Alabama made it all the way to the Final Four. Wisconsin, also a scary team, but man, BYU just lurking in the water down there. I love BYU's draw. I think that BYU can beat VCU, and it can also beat Wisconsin. I think that BYU is one of those teams in this East region that could make it all the way to Elite Eight and maybe have a date against Duke there in the Elite Eight. So it looks like they are going to another commercial break. It'll probably be the Houston Cougars being the next number 1 seed, unless we have Florida jumping them. So that's definitely going to be a storyline there. So let's go ahead and refresh MarchMadnessLive.com. Let's go ahead and look here at the East region. Let's see if we can slide on over here. There we go. So let's see there. The number 1 seed, like I mentioned, is Duke. They get a 16 seed. I don't know. Remember the seeds. I think it's Mount St. Mary's was one of them. 8 seed Mississippi State and 9 seed Baylor. I would probably be picking Baylor in this matchup, though. Both of these teams have had their highs and had their lows, but both teams love to get after it on the defensive side. This would be a great matchup, but I would probably be leaning to Baylor here. And then you have 5 seed Oregon out of the Big Ten versus the Conference USA champs in Liberty. I think that Oregon should have no problem there. And then number 4 seed Arizona, number 13 seed Akron. I would really have to think about this one, but I think that Arizona would ultimately survive and advance and to set up a really good matchup between Oregon and Arizona in the second round. But, man, I might have to think about that one, though. Akron, I really like this team out of the MAC. So far, we have some strong 13 seeds with Yale on one side and Akron on another. But, Yale gets a really tough draw against Texas A&M. Akron gets a tough draw against Arizona. So don't really like the draws for the 13 seed so far. BYU against VCU, that's definitely going to be a great game. Can VCU slow down Richie Saunders? That's going to be the story in this one. But if I were to pick this one, I would probably be leaning BYU. So I like all the chalk here. But Wisconsin, Montana, I think that Wisconsin should have no problem against Montana in the 3 and the 14. St. Mary's and Vanderbilt, call me crazy, but I like Vanderbilt in this upset. I don't know. This is a team that I just think that Vanderbilt could beat. St. Mary's just really hasn't shown me anything. They really struggled in the conference tournament. I know that this is a team that just went guns a-blazing in their conference regular season, but Vanderbilt, I know that Vanderbilt hasn't been playing well down the stretch, but something just tells me that Vandy is going to pull off an upset. So I would be leaning towards the Commodores in this matchup against St. Mary's. Every time I pick St. Mary's, they always lose in the first round. So I wouldn't be surprised if I pick Vanderbilt and St. Mary's ended up winning this one. And then you got number 2 seed Alabama and number 15 seed Robert Morris. So far we have at least a half of the bracket filled out, and we'll have the second half of the bracket here in a couple of moments. So thoughts, everyone. I want to know your thoughts so far. Are you surprised that North Carolina got in? Any other surprises there? What Cinderella stories you like? I think that Lipscomb already being the 14th seed, maybe a potential upset against Iowa State. Maybe Akron pulls off an upset against Arizona, or do you see Yale pulling off an upset against Texas A&M, or do you not see any upset so far? I mean, but that's what March Madness is for. We love to see the upset. So let me know what potential upsets that you like so far. But all right, let's see what team is going to be next, the number 1 overall seed. Will it be Houston? Will it be Florida? I don't think it's going to be St. John's or Michigan State. I just don't think that those teams, I mean, St. John's obviously has done quite enough to earn that number 1 seed, but I think it is more than likely going to be Houston and Florida being the final number 1 seeds. But we're about to find that out here in a couple of seconds, as we're more than likely going to be getting to the Midwest and then closing it out with the West. But all right, let's go ahead and go to the next number 1 seed. It's going to be the Houston Cougars. So the Houston Cougars, the number 3 overall seed, they are going to, I mean, they feel like this has been a team that's been a number 1 seed for like the past decade. They've been absolutely dominating. And they dominated the Big 12. They won the conference tournament championship as well as the regular season championship. So they'll be playing their games in Wichita, Kansas, and they get SIU Edwardsville in the first round. Definitely what a story for SIU Edwardsville. So they don't get an easy one against Houston. They're probably going to be one and done, SIUE. But nonetheless, congratulations to SIU Edwardsville. Oh, boy, here's Gonzaga being the number 8 seed. So we might have a potential Mark Few versus Kelvin Sampson game in round number 2. That would be crazy. Let's see what number 9 seed we get. Come on, give me like UConn here. Like Gonzaga, UConn, I would love to see. So let's see what number 9 seed will be facing off against Gonzaga. And let's see who it's going to be. All right, come on, guys. Georgia versus Gonzaga. Georgia is like one of the only few teams that beat Florida this season. So definitely watch out for Georgia. So the number 5 seed in this Midwest region is the Clemson Tigers. They'll be playing in Providence. So let's see what number 12 seed will be. McNeese. Probably going to be McNeese here is going to be my guess. So let's see what number 12 seed that they get. And it will be the McNeese State Cowboys, the Southland champs. Back-to-back times we saw the Cowboys win their conference tournament. They faced off against Gonzaga in this same spot and ended up losing. This is definitely a tough draw to face off against a team like Clemson. And number 4 seed is Purdue in the Midwest. So Clemson, the 5 and the 4. And Purdue gets High Point. High Point, another team we saw in the tournament last season. They were one and done. We will see if the High Point Panthers can pull off a shocker against Purdue. I could definitely see it. I'm not really too high on Purdue this season. But that's a really good matchup if we get it with Clemson, or will McNeese and High Point maybe give a little bit of fireworks in this region. We will just have to see. Number 6 seed is Illinois out of the Big Ten, playing close to home there. They'll be playing in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Let's see what 11 seed they draw. This is probably going to be either the play-in game, and it is Texas and Xavier. So I think 14 SEC teams are going to get into the tournament, which is going to set an all-time record. So the Longhorns out of the SEC get into the dance, and they'll be facing off against Xavier. So it looks like Indiana, San Diego State is in, but Boise, also another team left out of the field. So we see Texas and Xavier. Wow, that's a shocker. I did not see Texas getting into the tournament, but they'll be facing off against Xavier and Dayton in the first 4 games, and the winner will be playing off against Illinois. 3 seed out of the SEC is Kentucky, record of 22-11, dealing with some injuries. They don't have Jackson Robinson right now. Otega Owe got banged up in their last game against Alabama. They'll be facing off against the 14th seed, the Sun Belt champs, Troy Trojans, who have a record of 23-10. So Kentucky, really good, tough draw for that team. So number 7 team is UCLA. So looks like the bottom quadrant games in the Midwest will be playing in Lexington, Kentucky. UCLA gets a West Coast battle of Utah State. So the Aggies out of the Mountain West are safely into the field. And we see Tennessee. So we have a lot of SEC teams here all scattered throughout this bracket, but Tennessee, real nice showing for them in the SEC tournament. So we see the Vols be the number 2 seed here in the Midwest. So let's see what number 15 seed that they draw. And they get Wofford. So Wofford, the Wofford Terriers, Wofford has been in the tournament, feels like, for the past couple of 2 or 3 seasons. But storyline there, Tennessee has to play their games in Lexington, Kentucky. So we're going to be seeing a lot of big orange faces. So Tennessee fans are going to be showing up if Tennessee can make a run to the second round and ultimately to the Sweet 16 there. But Houston, the number 1 seed in this one. The 2 seed is Tennessee. 3 seed is going to be Kentucky, and 4 seed is Purdue. So you see 2 out of the top 4 seeds in this region being from the Southeastern Conference. But big storyline there, if you missed it out, is Texas got into the tournament. They were projected first team out, but looks like the Longhorns have done enough, even with 14 losses in the regular season. Looks like the committee did value those 2 wins in Nashville against Vanderbilt and against Texas A&M, who is a number 4 seed in the tournament. So, like I mentioned, 14 SEC teams looks like to be safely into this field. But really good region here for the number 1 seed. Again, I mean, man, I would hate to face off against Gonzaga, though, if they do beat Georgia in the second round. That's going to be a tough matchup for Houston. It's going to be a low-scoring game because Houston and Gonzaga, 2 of the best defensive teams in the tournament. So that's probably going to be like a battle to 50 or 60 if it even gets there. But, man, McNeese, the 12 seed, which is a team that I really like, gets a bad draw against Clemson. Purdue gets High Point there. So this might be the region of chaos if we get it. But obviously Houston is going to be a big storyline there. So let's go ahead and go again through, give some analysis through the Midwest region as the teams pop up there. So Houston, the number 1 seed in the Midwest, will be facing off against the 16 seed SIU. And then if Houston, I think that they're going to be taking care of business there. So they get the winner, number 8 seed Gonzaga, and number 9 seed Georgia. I mean, look at the 8-9 games we get. Gonzaga, Georgia. Let's go ahead and scroll back. What else do we get? So we get Baylor, Mississippi State, as well as Louisville Creighton. So, I mean, sign me up for all these 8-9 games. But Gonzaga, West Coast Conference champs, are the 8 seed in the Midwest. Georgia are the number 9. Clemson, the number 5 seed here out of the ACC. Clemson got knocked out by Louisville in the conference tournament. But this is a team well coached. This is a veteran team. This is a team that just made it all the way to Elite 8 before they ended up losing and falling just short in the Final Four. Really tough draw that they get here with number 12, McNeese. I don't know if I could pull off the upset, though. I really are very high on this Clemson team. But McNeese, they're going to play, 2 really solid halves of basketball. They're going to learn from mistakes from last year as well. I mean, Gonzaga clearly outmatched them. But how does McNeese guard Chase Hunter down there in the middle is going to be the big storyline for the Cowboys if they can ultimately pull off this upset. Then we see number 4 seed Purdue out of the Big Ten. They get the number 13 seed High Point. I think that Purdue should survive and advance there and face off against the winner of Clemson and McNeese. So that's my early prediction there. And then we see number 6 seed Illinois facing off against the winner of Texas and Xavier. I think that you really got to I think that's going to be a really good playing game between Texas and Xavier. Both of those teams have really caught some fire down in the season. You obviously got to look at Texas, one of the best true freshmen in the country in the SEC, and Trey Johnson. So that's going to be a problem for Xavier. And it's going to be a problem if Texas makes it to Illinois. But Illinois has been a team that's dealt with some injuries, some illnesses. They've been playing well. They did get beat in their first game in the Big Ten conference tournament. But, I mean, this Illinois team, you just can't really figure them out. But they get the winner of Texas and Xavier. Then the number 3 seed, you have Kentucky facing off against the Sun Belt champs in the Troy Trojans. That's definitely going to be a fun 4th 14-3 matchup to watch. I was really looking at to see what Sun Belt team was going to make it, and it was Troy. Then the 7-10, you have UCLA and number 10 seed Utah State. And to close it out in the Midwest, you have number 2 seed Tennessee and number 15 seed Wofford. So that is all three of the regions so far. We have one more region to get to, and it's more than likely going to be the Florida Gators being the final number 1 seed in the field of 68. So just one more to get to, and we will be closing the book here on this March Madness Selection Show live reaction. So let's go ahead and get to the final region, which is going to be the West. And will it be the Florida Gators? And yes, it is. Your conference tournament champs out of the SEC, Florida, is your final number 1 seed, 30-4. Really no surprise there. I really didn't really see anybody competing for them, especially with Florida beating Tennessee today and Alabama going out in the semifinal round. So now let's see who Florida will be facing. Norfolk State. Obviously, Norfolk State has some history. When they were 15 seed a couple of years back, they ended up beating Missouri. And, oh, boy, UConn, the 2-time defending champs, they put them in Florida's region. They're the number 8 seed. So Dan Hurley gets the number 9 seed Oklahoma Sooners, 20-13. So that's going to be – man, the 8-9 games are just going to be an absolute treat to watch. So we see UConn and Oklahoma in the 8-9 matchup. The winner of that will get number 1 seed Florida and number 16 seed Norfolk State. So do we see a potential upset with UConn? I don't know. Number 5 seed is Memphis. Thank you, committee. I've been seeing all these bracketologies putting Memphis 8-7. Ain't no way. Memphis, you deserve this number 5 seed. So Memphis, the conference champs, and they get one of the hottest teams in the country with Colorado State, the champs, out of the Mountain West. So a little bit of an upset alert maybe there for Memphis as they face off against the Rams. But great 5-12 game there. Those will be playing in Seattle, excuse me. Then the number 4 seed out of the Big Ten we see is the Maryland Terrapins. That's going to be a dangerous number 4 seed. They have one of the best starting lineups in all the country. So let's see what number 13 seed that they draw. And it is going to be the Grand Canyon Lopes. Grand Canyon pulled off the upset against St. Mary's last year. Almost made a run and almost defeated Alabama. So Grand Canyon gets the draw against Maryland. So now let's move on down. Missouri, the number 6 seed in the West, they'll be playing their first round game in Wichita, Kansas. So a little close to home there for the Missouri Tigers out of the SEC. They'll be facing off against the number 11 seed. Let's see who it is here in a couple of minutes. It's going to be the Drake Bulldogs, 30-3. This is one of the most dangerous teams. Missouri is going to have their hands full. Champs out of the Valley. So Drake back in the dance. They were in the dance last season when they faced off against Washington State. So we'll see if Drake can be a Cinderella story here and make a deep run. I really like their draw there against Missouri. And then the number 3 seed is the Texas Tech Red Raiders out of the Big 12 with an overall record of 25-8. They'll also be playing their first round games in Wichita, Kansas. And let's see what number 14 seed they draw. It's UNC Wilmington, 27-7. Champs of their respective conference as well. So that's a tough one for them. Texas Tech, one of the more elite teams in all of college basketball. So tough draw there for UNC Wilmington. We'll see if they can pull off a shaka there in Kansas. Speaking of Kansas, number 7 seed is Kansas. Is the number 7 seed. I expect Arkansas, the number 10 seed, to be there. It is Arkansas. So we do get Kansas, the preseason number 1 team in all the land. Is the number 7 seed. They get to face off against Arkansas, a team that's going to get Boogie Flan back in time for this NCAA tournament. And the number 2 seed, let's see who the number 2 seed is going to be the Red Storm of St. John's. So great story for Rick Pitino's squad, regular season as well as conference tournament champs. They're going to be a tough out come in a couple of weeks. So we have St. John's in Florida, the number 2 seed, and number 1 seed, and then they get to face off against Omaha, which is the number 15 seed. So that quadrant will be playing in Providence. So that's your final region. We're going to go ahead and wait for what teams were on the bubble. You know, who was your last 4 in and who was your first 4 out. Really looking at this, dangerous draw here for Florida, even though they're one of the best teams in the country. UConn is always a team you got to watch. Memphis and Maryland, I mean, being a 5 and a 4, I mean, give me Memphis and Maryland in the second round. That's going to be a fantastic game. if Memphis and Maryland can take care of business. But Florida, I know they're playing really hot, but this is definitely not an easy draw for them. Memphis, so with PJ Haggerty, we'll see if they could get one of their stars back with Hunter. He was out today against UAB in the American Athletic Conference Championship. And then you have down here with Texas Tech and St. John's. Those are two scary number 2 and number 3 seeds there. So really tough region for Florida. This is what you get for being the number 4 overall seed. But I think that Florida, even with the tough draw, could go all the way to San Antonio and ultimately cut down the nets. But really like that 6-11 game with Missouri and Drake, as well as 7-10 with Kansas and Arkansas. We saw those two teams face off in the preseason. They had a preseason game, and Arkansas absolutely outmatched Kansas. So can Arkansas do the same? Will Kansas get a little bit of revenge from that preseason game that happened before this season? But man, this West region is absolutely loaded. Your top 4 teams are number 1 seed Florida, 2 seed is St. John's, 3 seed is Texas Tech, and number 4 seed is Maryland. Those are all 4 teams that I really like, and it's going to be really hard for me to pick there. So conferences with multiple bids. SEC does set an NCAA tournament record with 14. Big 10 gets 8. Big 12 has 7. Big East has 4. ACC and Mountain West have 4. And West Coast Conference has 2. So the SEC does get 14 teams, with Texas getting in. So the last 4 in are Texas, Xavier, San Diego State, North Carolina. Your first 4 out. Looks like your first team out is West Virginia, Indiana, Ohio State, and Boise State. So I definitely agree with them. I mean, their net being in 51, they just haven't been playing well down the stretch. So I agree with that. Indiana, you could have said that they could have been in the tournament. Same with Boise State. But ultimately, I think that they got it right. You could say that Texas doesn't, but this is going to be some really good first 4 games with San Diego State facing off against North Carolina and then Texas and Xavier. So it looks like that is it for the field at 68. I appreciate everybody for tuning in to the live reaction. Hope you enjoyed the rest of the tournament. And like I mentioned, this is not going to be our only show today. In a couple of hours, we're going to be doing our official March Madness prediction show. So definitely stay tuned to that. And we will see you in a couple of hours when we make our official predictions of 68. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in, and I'll catch y'all next time. So long for now.